A warm welcome back to the Young Hearts Run Free podcast. David, how are you doing this evening?
I am very well, thank you. It's really good to see you guys. How are you both?
I am great, thank you very much, John.
I'm also doing very well. Looking forward to a catch up with David. Let me say, for people who want to find out more about David, go way back to season 7, episode 5. David's first chat with us, Stephen.
2.5 years ago. That was a great chat. It went on. It was a bumper episode. But tonight, listeners, we've got a more specific topic that we want to speak to David about. But before I do so, before I delve into that, what have you been doing tonight, David?
Oh, tonight we had the very first of our new Couch to 5K program with our Fit Like Jogger runners. So tonight's the start of our 9-week program. So I was out taking these newbies out for the first time. So always nice to see them.
I was wondering how many people you've put through that program over the duration that you've done it. I don't know if you keep that statistic, but it would be...
We don't have a cumulative number, but we get between sort of around about 30 each time. So if we're doing that twice a year, 60, and then we have had, this is our 20th program. So that would be maybe 600 people, give or take. But a good number of people have come through it. So it's been incredible.
Changing lives, it's magic. Congratulations and good luck to all the Fit Like Joggers, because David was also telling us as part of their initiation, they get a link to the Young Hearts Run Free podcast, season 7, episode 5.
They're going to love that. They're going to love that.
Quite right. And they even come back the week after. However, we have already spoken about this on the introduction very briefly, David, but we are here to speak about something called the Everest Marathon. Now, those who know David, or indeed those who maybe didn't know him, but know him from social media, will have shared this experience already, because I have. And I was a bit, this looks absolutely amazing to be running with the giant mountains around you. So, David, over to you. Why the Everest Marathon, and what drew you to such a challenge?
Oh, well, I mean, I've always liked the idea of going to Nepal. It's always had this draw to me, and I had never been before, and I just was really fascinated by it as a country, as a culture, and of course the mountains. And it was just one of these places that I always wanted to go to and never thought I maybe would. And so I was just thinking, how am I going to fulfill this desire? And when I came across the Everest Marathon a couple of years ago, I just thought, this is maybe the perfect opportunity. And it was going to coincide with my 50th birthday as well. And I thought, what better reason than that to justify a trip of that nature? I mean, it was always going to be an expedition. It's not just something you can do in a week. You take 3 weeks to be there overall. But I just really thought, how am I going to justify it? And the 50th birthday coming up was just the exact reason. And so I ended up putting a deposit down for Cheryl and I, and that was it. We were gonna get it in the diary and make a go of it. So that was the reason behind it. So it had been on the calendar for a couple of years, and then it was a case of counting down towards it.
Superb. So a real bucket list type thing, for not just for the running part, but the visiting that part of the world. I can totally relate to that, by the way.
Yeah.
There's a niche needing scratched for me there. I've just had my 50th birthday. You should have bloody sent me a WhatsApp, David.
You could have come and joined us.
Yeah, I was going to ask, when was it, just for context?
So this was in May this year. So okay. 16th of May we flew out, and the marathon itself is always on the 29th of May. It's what they call Everest Day, which is the anniversary when it was first climbed. So it will always be on the 29th of May. And you then give yourself, I suppose, a couple of weeks of acclimatization then before the date of the run. And then we flew back at the start of June. So it was just under 3 weeks that we were away from May into June.
What an experience.
29th of May 1953.
It was, yes.
Same year John was born.
Or just I celebrated my 10th birthday in 1953. David, I'm interested to know what sparked. When did the Everest Marathon come on your radar?
I'd heard about it maybe 15 years ago or so. But to me at that point, it was probably long before I was ever a runner. And so it was just something I'd heard about. But it was really only just when I started looking into it a couple of years ago that it really sort of struck me that this is now something we could possibly do. You know, the world's highest marathon, a tough challenge, but taking you not just to an incredible country, but deep into the mountains of somewhere that has just got so much appeal, so much history, and it's just so dramatic. And to think that you can actually run there. I mean, running, that's one thing, but yeah, to actually have a reason to go. And it just all was as if it was coming into alignment. And I thought to myself, if I can't do it, then, you know, I love running and I love mountains. So I should be the person that this is targeted towards. And, you know, it really felt like it was the right thing to do for us to go.
I like to know like the logistics. So where do you fly for? What's the route to?
Yeah, well, you can do it in a number of different ways. So, I mean, for the marathon itself, you can sign up just to do the marathon, and you can almost like make your own way, hire your own guide to trek you up to the start, and then just do the marathon element on your own, sort of thing. But most people will do it through one of the organized tour companies. Everest Marathon themselves have a sort of tour company where they provide all the logistics and the accommodation. And we went through a British tour company called KE Adventure, and they provide all the kind of logistics and organization once you get there. So we flew into Kathmandu, and we had a night in Kathmandu in a beautiful former royal palace that was just kind of setting us off nicely for what was to come in terms of our fairly primitive accommodation, but actually can't complain. And then from Kathmandu, the next morning we flew into Lukla, which is the tiny airport strip on the side of a mountain. It's the one that you sort of occasionally see in YouTube videos of planes coming into land. It's just over 500 meters long, and you can only get like a 16-seater twin prop in there that just comes in. You don't even see the runway until you're almost down onto it, and then you come to a screeching halt within that 500 meters. And that's you in Lukla. So I think they call it the world's most dangerous airport, but they were proud of themselves that they haven't had any accidents for 7 years. So we were fairly comfortable with that. And I think they do say that the pilots are incredibly well trained, and it's an experience. I mean, even just flying in and out of there is quite an experience. It's amazing.
I have seen the YouTube and TikTok and reels of the flights landing and taking off at that airport, and it looks, like something out of Indiana Jones or something.
Yeah, the airstrip itself is at sort of 12 degrees angle, so you only manage to come to a stop because you're going uphill, slowing down, and then to take off, you're then pointing yourself down the slope, and then it's gravity that helps you away, and you just hope that you get enough speed to take off.
Wonder if it's a Strava segment, the runway.
I love the ingenuity of that. And they're making that happen so a plane can get in and out. I actually love it. I also love the words Everest, Nepal, Kathmandu. It's very exotic and alluring to be going there. So it must have felt like a dream to get there. However, another exotic place is Aberdeen. How do you train for the Everest Marathon in Aberdeen, David?
Yeah, well, there's elements to it in terms of what's the route going to be like. And of course, if you look at a plan of the route and you think, well, you're starting off really high, you're starting off at 5,300 meters and finishing at 3,800 meters. So you think, oh, it's all downhill. And that was perhaps my mistake, because in fact, it wasn't all downhill. There were a lot of really brutal uphills. But in my head, I was thinking, well, it's trail running. It's all off. I mean, I say it's off-road. There are no roads. That's the real beauty of the whole place. Ever since leaving Lukla to start the trek, there are no roads. There's no vehicles. There's no cars. There's no motorbikes. There's nothing except yaks, horses, and your own feet. So, I mean, it's just really beautiful from that perspective. But the track itself, it's all just trail. So getting used to trail running. I mean, being a trail runner is one of the things. If you're a road runner, you're going to find it a bit more of a challenge. And my plan was just to do a lot of hills. So we thought we'll go and do some Munros, get big long days out in the Munros. And my greatest plan, in fact, was to go out to Aviemore and go and get the wee Cairngorm hopper bus that goes up and down to Cairngorm Mountain, and get the bus up and run down, and then try and catch the next bus up and do that multiple times. But that plan was slightly scuppered by the fact that I did my back in sometime in April. Probably my fault for trying to lift 1,000 Santa suits up into my loft ready for next year, but that's a whole different story. So this great idea of saving money by buying my Santa suits early has left to hundreds of pounds of physiotherapy. So I didn't get the training that I wanted. So it wasn't quite as ideal. I could call it a long taper in that case, but really the plan would have been trails and hills with. But I mean, there's elements to it as well, and we'll maybe go on to talk about it. But the air is so thin up there, it's a real challenge. So you fly into Kathmandu, and then by the time you get up to Lukla, you're already at 2,800 meters, and you notice it. So you notice that you're out of breath. You notice that you're struggling to do too much. If you're walking around, if you're going on any kind of incline, then you really feel that you are short of breath. And so there are some things you can do about that in advance, training wise. So you can sleep in an oxygen tent, but for these sorts of things, you've really got to take it seriously. You've got to be, if you're gonna use an oxygen chamber to effectively sleep in and reduce oxygen, then you've got to do it for several hours, something like sort of 12, 14 hours a day. You've got to spend in that in the lead up to the event for it to actually have any benefit. Some of the people that we were away with did do that, and worked really hard on the kind of the altitude side of things in terms of oxygen deprivation and running with masks on and things like that. But I just thought to myself, you're not really going to know until you're there. And I've never been up to anything like that altitude before. I think the highest was probably 3,500 meters in the Alps or in Spain. Where you've definitely noticed it, but unless you're spending time at that altitude, it's very difficult to know how you're going to be. So the biggest thing for us when we were there was just the 2-week trek, or it was maybe 11 days of building up as you gradually ascend towards Everest Base Camp. And that really, to most people, is how you get used to the acclimatization, by taking it nice and slowly as you head up day by day.
So you've done your training, obviously, or I know, David, you're naturally attuned now. I think you get to a point where, despite your back injuries and all like that, you know the crack. That's what I'm trying to say. You know how to also suffer by this stage of your running career as well. But you're almost training on the way to the start line.
Yeah. And I think everybody felt that certainly in terms of your acclimatization and just getting used to the terrain, the time leading up to the start line is the best thing for you to be training.
And then so you say you've flown to Lukla, and then it's an 11-day trek basically to the start line at Everest Base Camp. Is that what I'm
Yeah, so we were in a group of 19 people, and then we had 5 guides and also some porters who would carry our bags day to day. And we would go from what they call tea house to tea house. And these are effectively little hostel accommodation, fairly primitive, but actually nicer than I expected. And so each day is anything from sort of 10K to 16K of trekking from where you started up to the next tea house. And that's kind of, you take it gradually. You go a little bit higher in altitude each day. A couple of points you stay 2 nights there so that you get a little bit more acclimatization. And what you might do is then climb higher and descend back to where you were going to stay. And it just kind of gradually progresses, day to day, staying in these tea huts. And they're lovely, actually. They're nice. They're all privately owned by some little Nepalese person or family. There's kids running about. And I wasn't sure how basic they would be. I was prepared for the worst in a way, but most of them, they were reasonable. The toilets got progressively more primitive as you got further up the mountain, but that was to be expected. And I would say all of it was bearable. It was all pleasant. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going and finding our new places that we were going to stay in each night.
It's all about adventure, isn't it? And 11 days getting to Everest Base Camp, that's 11 days of eating. What was your food intake on the way? Were you acclimatizing to food as well?
Yeah, there was plenty of food going. And, I was really wanting to eat the Nepalese food as much as anything. But because it was a British tour company, I think they probably tried to give us things that they thought Western people would like. So I was almost a little bit disappointed in the food some of the time, that there was lots of pasta and chips and pizza. And you're thinking, we don't really want this. I want to just, dal bat and rice, which is the sort of traditional vegetarian food that all the locals are eating and all the guides are eating. So I would have much rather had that on a daily basis than some of the things that they did give us. The one thing I did get warned of in advance was, be careful of eating meat as you get higher up the mountain, because the further you are away from Lukla, the further that food has been away from a fridge. So we were always a bit careful about eating meat as we went further up. But actually, again, the food was good. We were looking really well. We'd stop for lunch. We had great breakfasts, lots of porridge, that sort of thing. And what they also have is Nepalese tea. So you would get ginger tea, you would get lemon tea, you would get mint tea, you would get all sorts of different black teas that that you would just live off in the tea houses when you arrived. And that was really nice, actually. It was very much a case of getting into the culture.
And I know it must have been roughly about the same time. A couple of other listeners to the show, Alan Brown, Hazel Brown, they were on a trip to Nepal. They were at Everest. They were heading for. Alan certainly made it to base camp. What was it like being at Everest Base Camp, David?
Oh, well,
The marathon will come. We'll talk about that. But
yeah.
Everest Base Camp, what's that
I mean, the
like?
first time we saw Everest was probably about sort of 5 days out from reaching base camp, but you see it in the distance. And it was just to actually see Everest, this mountain that we've heard about, that we've dreamed about, that we've seen pictures of, that we've seen movies about, and then to actually see it in the flesh is really an emotional moment, just to actually see Everest through the clouds. And you think, wow, this is phenomenal. And then as you get closer and closer, so the day before we arrived at base camp, we were in a place called Gorak Shep, and went up a nearby mountain there called Kalapatar. And from Kalapatar, you get this incredible view down to base camp, but also across to Everest. And you feel really close to it. And you think, wow, this is it. We're now going to be at Everest base camp. So the next day you trek up to base camp, and it's, what I didn't realize was that base camp is set up and then deconstructed every time. So twice a year, it's all set up. I thought it was almost like a permanent village, but it's on a glacier, and it's there. It effectively springs up and then it disappears again, which is phenomenal to think about. But it sits on a glacier, and a lot of the glacier has then rubble and rock on it, and that's where all the tents are. And then you're looking across to the flowing, clean white glacier, which is phenomenally beautiful, stunning to look at. But the tents are all on kind of rubble and rock, on top of the glacier, and it's a kind of incredible experience. Really, it's huge for a start. We were there at the tail end of the climbing season, so it was probably just a fraction of the tents that had been there. But overall, it's a mile long, and you've got multiple helicopter landing pads on it. You've got all of the tents of the different expeditions, and these tents can be anything from a little huddle of 4 small tents to, a village in their own right with, a central mess tent, a catering tent, a dining tent, and some of them have really high standard sort of accommodation tents as well, and showers and things like that. Ours was pretty primitive, but it was still, absolutely fine. And the nice thing about running the marathon is you do actually get to stay at base camp. So most trekkers that go up get to visit base camp, but don't generally get to stay there. So we got 2 nights at base camp before the marathon itself. So we were able to stay there in the tents, and it was nice. You do feel the altitude there, and you do feel that you are, as high as you've been. And you're thinking to yourself, this is a bit of a daunting prospect as to what lies ahead. But no, it's an amazing experience to be there. And one of the nicest things as well about base camp was actually watching the tail end of the expeditions. So this was, like I say, the tail end of the climbing season, but there were still mountaineers coming off Everest who had been at the summit. and you could always tell when they came down because they're all like weathered and worn, and they've usually got frostbite or dark patches around their eyes where, between their goggles and whatever face mask they've had on. But it was really amazing to think that these people are coming down from the summit of Everest here, and you're in amongst them. So that was pretty spectacular.
It would be. I'm interested. I've got a wee fascination. It sounds similar to yours with Everest, So I've watched all the movies, read all about it, know where all the dead bodies are.
Old green boots.
Exactly, all that stuff, and it is. I could tell when you were speaking about it there. I was actually in Animal Kingdom in Disney there, and there's a ride called Everest. I think that's the closest I'll get to Everest, for real. But a couple of questions. That Kumbu icefall, is that near base camp or is it too far
So
away to see?
you're on the Kumbu. The Kumbu Glacier comes
That's the
down
glacier.
through, and
Yeah,
that's what base camp is built on. So when you set off on an expedition up Everest, you go through that glacier, and that's your first part of
yeah.
your ascent. So we were at the bottom part of that,
Uh-huh.
on the rock and the rubble. So we're not running necessarily on the ice, but
Yeah,
you're looking at it, you're watching it, and
really.
you see it all. Yeah, yeah.
Is it not just like being in a movie set? Is it like sort of pinch yourself?
No, it's far more incredible than you've ever imagined, to
Yeah.
look at it and to look at the little climbing route that weaves its way up through it. You can look at as many maps and photos as you like, but nothing prepares you for actually seeing it
Ah,
in the flesh and
brilliant. Thank you
the
for
way it looks. Yeah.
explaining that.
I'm
Oh,
I'm
go on.
loving the passion and the excitement in your voice, David. Seriously, I think Everest is something that captures everybody's imagination. But so you're the only person I've spoken to in my life, I think, that's been where you've been. So I'm getting excited even just listening to what you're talking about. What the altitude though, you mentioned about being short of breath. How else does it present itself? Because we hear about people getting sore heads and all, so was there any other signs that you were aware of?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It does have an effect on people. And as we trekked higher and higher, people would suffer and feel it. And there was one girl that was with us, and we got to about 4,200 meters, and she went down really badly with it. And she was just, sore head, being sick. The doctors were a bit worried about her. Our guide was worried about her. She'd been taking, or she started taking Diamox, which is an altitude drug that helps you and helps prevent altitude sickness. And in fact, the doctors after that pretty much said we should all take it. They said if you really want to give yourself the best chance of running this marathon, then you should all be taking this altitude drug, Diamox. But yeah, a few people. This girl actually did amazingly well. She recovered and she continued the trek and managed the marathon, and we were super super proud of her. But there were other people in our group. Couldn't sleep, could find themselves just really fatigued. One guy ended up not making it to base camp, and he had to trek down the mountain a little bit, and he did the half marathon, which started a bit lower down. And another couple had to leave by helicopter because she came down really unwell when she was just up at about 5,100 meters. And Cheryl, who was with me, really suffered the fatigue and the tiredness to the point that she was just in her tent for, the day before the marathon, absolutely wiped out. But when you're there, you don't really have much of an option about what
Mm.
lies ahead, because the only other way out is by helicopter at $2,500. So, you're up at this point. If you think you're going to struggle, you've got to get on and do it. So, I mean, full credit to her, that, pulled herself together, managed to, get to the start line. And at that point, you just have to get yourself down the hill. And if it takes you all day and more, then that's what it's going to take you.
Well, John,
Um,
question for me. We're
yeah, go
still
for
in
it. Yeah,
altitude, but it's still
yeah, yeah.
related. The altitude at base camp, David, is
5,300 meters.
5,300 meters. So, what's that in real money?
About 17,000 feet, 17,500 feet.
Right. Okay. Okay. All of a sudden, I'm much more in context when you're speaking in feet. So, a little higher than anything that we've got, obviously. What is the weather like at that height, 17,000 feet? at that
Very
time of year?
changeable, very changeable. So, I mean, it's coming towards their monsoon season, but we didn't get really struck by that. In fact, I was really pleasantly surprised that the whole way up in the trek, we had mostly clear days. We had some days with a little bit of cloud, but over the course of the day, just like Aberdeen, the cloud can disappear and leave you with some beautiful evenings with the mountains surrounding you. When we got to base camp itself, the very first night there, we woke up to about 3 or 4 inches of snow that had come down overnight onto the tents, which made it look incredible. But you thought, oh, well, it has actually got cold here. You know, when we did have down sleeping bags, big down jackets. But, you know, an hour later, the snow's melted. An hour after that, it's 15 degrees. And an hour after that, it's, you know, hitting 20 degrees. So I found that actually it was much warmer than I expected it to be. I was in shorts and t-shirt for virtually the whole trek until maybe the last day when we were up at base camp. So yeah, it was nice.
Yeah.
I think we got about perfect conditions though, because people who'd gone the week before us said that they'd got a lot of rain, and I know people who'd gone and to do the base camp trek at the start of April when the season kind of opens up found that it's really, really cold. So I think the later you leave it, the warmer it's going to be. And then on marathon day, that was the hottest day that we had of the whole trip. So that was nice. That I think it was pushing 30 degrees at that point.
Well, you've opened the door to marathon day there. All carved up by this point. Yeah, I'm assuming on pasta and pizza.
Yeah, as best we could, absolutely, yes.
However, what time of day does the marathon start?
So it's an early start. So I think it was 6 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
To try and give people the best chance of having the benefit of the day. But of course, it doesn't get light till just about then. So you are starting just as it's starting to get daylight, and so you wake up and it's like a super early start for getting out breakfast, and everyone needs to get fed, get their gear on, and all gather together, which is about half a mile down the glacier from where our tents were. So yeah, so it's an early start, but you see people starting to gather.
How many people are assembling on the start line?
We had 200 people doing the marathon. And there was also an ultra marathon, which had set off a couple of hours earlier as well. Now, I don't know why people would want to do that. And of course, you think, oh, an ultra marathon. I like the idea of an ultra marathon. But to me, it was a case of that's an unnecessary hardship. It's like saying that you're going to do the marathon, but hopping it or something. I just thought a marathon itself, that's enough. This is what it's all about, going and doing Everest Marathon. But there were about 17 people did this ultra marathon, which was effectively the same route, but with some big long out and backs as well,
right.
Which just seemed like sort of making it difficult for the sake of it. Whereas what we felt was like...
Says David, who's done some madcap stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I know that, but I didn't need to do it at 5,500 meters.
I've got the stats here. They call it an extreme ultra. It's 70k. The ultra, and it's saying there was 21 people on the start list, 14 completed it. Yeah, that's what it's saying. So quite amazing.
But let me tell you the other interesting fact about the 200 who started the marathon. All 200 finished it. Every single one. Now that's a must be very few marathons that every single person finishes. But again, you don't have much choice. There's no roads. There's no get out.
Nowhere else they go.
They've got nowhere to go. Yeah.
It's
like you're in your race t-shirt. You've got to go and check into a tea house and then do the rest tomorrow.
Now, you just touched on something there, and well done, everybody, because we often speak about getting to the start line's a victory in itself. And when you were talking about the hiking and the altitude and the sickness some people experience, certainly getting to this start line is a victory in itself. But what you mentioned about shorts and t-shirt, what was your kit? Because I'm imagining people running with these goggles on.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It wasn't
the side wind
as that. Sunglasses.
Like Sir Edmund Hillary or something.
So because you start early, and of course, like I say, it snowed overnight. Some nights we were there. So it's cold in the morning. So you're out and about. You've got your down jacket on. But our guides were at the start line, and they just, they'll take your jacket off you just before the race starts and make sure that the jackets get back to you. So, so I was in. Well, I was going to say most people were in shorts. A lot of people were in leggings. I, of course, was in a kilt. So I ran it in a kilt. And I had a t-shirt on that had arm guards, and I thought the arm guards would be fine. I'd take them off when it got too hot, but in fact, I had to keep them on to keep the sun off me because it was such a hot day on marathon day itself that I was kind of glad of the arm guards to stop me getting myself sunburnt. And you know, it was such a nice day. So generally, yeah, a t-shirt, my kilt, pair of shorts underneath, and my arm guards and a hat. So yeah, that was the outfit.
What was on your feet?
Trail shoes. So I had a pair of Hoka Speedgood trail shoes. So they were perfect for it, actually, from my point of view. It was really perfect for that kind of terrain and trail. Felt a good grip and felt. Although on the trek up, we'd been in like walking boots. So if you've had like 2 weeks of your feet in walking boots and you take them off, you feel your ankles are really vulnerable. So I was, yeah. The day before, I was like, I'm going to spend some time in my trainers just to get my feet used to being in trainers again.
That's a
But
good point, because I was going to ask you actually, and it slipped my head. During that time you were in Nepal, did you go for a wee run at all?
well, so about halfway up, when I was at 4,200 meters, I thought to myself, we'd got to a tea house quite early, and I thought, I'm going to go out and do a little run here. Nobody else in the group wanted to do anything like that, so I thought, I'm just going to go out myself. And actually, it was terrible. Like, it was awful. I've never felt so awful in my life. You know, you run along a flat and you think, oh my God, I'm struggling. I'm so slow and I can barely breathe. You know, your heart's going through the roof and you're just like gulping for air. And then I got to this slight incline and I literally thought I was going to die. I thought, I have no idea how we're going to manage this. And we've still got, you know, 1,000 meters to climb. So I did about 3K out and back. And it was so tough. I got back, and at that point I thought, oh my God, any thoughts you had of times or how you're going to do in this, all bets are off. From now on, this is a realization that it's about just surviving and getting through it, and you cannot compare anything that you've done before to running at that altitude. So at least I'd given myself a wee taster, which was probably a good thing, but it did then give me the fear, and it made me realize you've got no chance of running when there's any incline. You know, you can manage some of the flats, you can manage the downhills, but it's going to be tough. And I think that was to me quite nice to tell myself that, rather than put pressure on myself and feel you've got to set off at high pace.
So take on your marks, get set, go.
It's pretty much like that. They take you to the most dramatic point on the glacier where you've got this enormous curtain behind you of glacial rock. So or glacier itself. And it's just, you know, phenomenal from the point of view of photos and everything else. But it does mean that you start the event with a big climb out of base camp. So you go up probably about 150 meters of climbing to begin with. And you've got a lot of Nepalese participants taking part, and they're always at the front, and they're the ones that are, you know, going to be speeding off. So you have the Nepalese runners, and off they go, and then everybody else just sort of falls into a procession behind them. And it's a bit of a narrow path to start with, so you've got to sort of find yourself where you think you want to be in amongst all of that. There's not a huge amount of overtaking to begin with. So you set off and you've got your first kind of mile along the glacier. And then, like I say, this incline, which takes you up to a bit of a ridge. And then I suppose at that point, that's when you feel, okay, you're on a bit of a downhill here. You've been doing some trekking, walking uphill, which seems funny in the first half mile of a marathon to be walking already. And then the kind of run opens up and you think, right, okay, just got to get into a rhythm. And I would say the whole thing felt like you just had to keep it from going into the red. You couldn't put too much effort in or else you were going to just buckle yourself, really. And I was really aware of that the whole time, that, you know, watching your heart rate, watching your breathing and thinking you've got to slow it down or else you're pushing into the red and that's not going to end well. So constantly thinking, right, where am I in all of this? But you're surrounded by people and you've spent the last 10, 12 days in a lot of their company as well. You know, there were the people in my trekking group, but you've also seen all the other trekking groups on the way up, made friends with so many people, faces you recognize, people you recognize, everybody's chatting. So it's really very pleasant. And honestly, unlike anything else you've ever been to, these people are all individually so honored to be in the mountains. You can tell that everyone there is thinking, what a privilege this is, what an amazing thing we're doing. look at where we're running, look at what surrounds us, look at what we're achieving. Aren't we lucky to be doing this? So as much as it was tough, you were all running with a smile on your face thinking, what an incredible experience this is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people there's stats, isn't there, about how many people have run a marathon on the planet. But to be one of the people that's ran the Everest Marathon, it is a privilege, and to be there is so, so special. But what you've been describing is a different type of race management, than 26.2 miles going around the streets of Aberdeen or Edinburgh or Glasgow or London. It's a different thing altogether. So, where there, on these other marathons I've mentioned, there's tables and there's gels and there's bottles of water. What was the script here,
Yeah, it
David?
was actually quite well supported. So they had quite a few checkpoints and quite a few sort of stop-off points where they had lots of snacks, lots of water. Although the water you were a bit wary of because, as much as they were pouring it out of nice, fresh plastic bottles, you could see them then topping up those bottles from a big bucket that was on the ground. So it was all about image. And actually, probably the toughest thing for me was I had taken water bottles with a filtration straw. So you're sort of filtering your water as you drink it, but to use them, you're actually having to suck really hard, and that's really challenging when you're running at altitude. You might have to spend like 10 or 12 seconds kind of sucking to get much water through. So I didn't drink as much as I should have done, but that wasn't through lack of water. That was just through me feeling that I should have used this filtration straw, whereas in fact I'm sure the water was all fine. But even if it wasn't, there's other ways to do it. You could put in a little capsule or something, a little iodine tablet or something, and then I would have maybe drunk more. So I would say my feeling was that I didn't really drink enough and I was really dehydrated afterwards. But in terms of the stuff that they provided, they had checkpoints, they had good medical teams out on the course. And so you knew where you were going, you knew what you were going to see as you came down. So it was really fine. And in your head as well, because you trekked up there, you knew kind of where you were going. You would run past, you think that's the tea hut we stayed at, that's the place we stopped for lunch, that's where you run through this memorial area where they've got all these incredible memorials to people who have died on Everest. And it was really quite emotional on the trek up as we were walking up to read about Scott Fisher and Rob Hall, but many, many others who had succumbed to Everest, and they might just have a little plaque as part of this memorial area. And then running back down through that as well, it was just amazing to see, and you felt, well, this is your challenge now. But there were moments like that that were particularly special. But you remember the route from where you'd been, and in fact, at one point as well, there's a little out and back where you run about 3.5 km up the hill, which wasn't very pleasant. And when I say run, I don't actually mean there was much running there. But the nice thing about that was then you saw a lot of people as well. So as you crossed over on this out and back, you would catch up with or see the speedy people that were ahead of me. But I saw most people in our group as well as they then crossed behind me too. So that was really nice. And you're just thinking, right, well, here's the next point in my mind. Here's the next tea house that we stayed in that we're going to run past again. And then as I got about sort of, past the halfway mark, I fell into step. You know how it often is when you're running and you fall into step with someone. So there was this Czech girl there, and we ended up to be honest, she came running past me, and I thought, right, well, a little bit of that sort of competitive, it's a pick me up. I'll catch up, and just encouraged me to pick things up when I was maybe fading a little bit. And when you find yourself running in step with someone, you do motivate each other. You pick up the speed when you feel you can, and you slow down to a walk when you're on an incline or whatever. And we just managed to. She didn't speak that much English, and we didn't really chat all that much, but it just felt like we worked really well together to pick up this pace when we needed to, and to keep pushing each other on. And certainly as we come towards the very end of it as well, when I was really struggling, she was a motivator, and I thought, right, okay, yeah, we're doing this and we're going to finish it together. So that was really nice too, just to kind of have some company like that.
Sorry, Stephen, on you go.
No, I was going to ask about the course itself. You described it, well, it's a big net downhill. It was running down a hill, but it's no running down a hill. Of course, we know that fine well. But in terms of the terrain, what, was it? I don't know. What was it comparable to for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to a lot of trails in Scotland in that there were bits that were just kind of sandy, routes that had been sort of worn out over time. I
Uh-huh.
mean, you wouldn't ever get a quad bike up it, but you would, get a horse up it, and the yaks would be able to climb up. So there's some bits that were steeper than others, where you're coming down sort of steps or carved out into the rock, or and you're really having to use your hands to get through some of them, and some bits that were fairly, less tough, and you could just sort of run through them through kind of rabbit tracks, and then as you get closer down towards the finish line as well, some of the paths got a bit better, that they were, that you could take a mountain bike across or whatever. But there was a lot of steps, I guess, coming down and then climbing up again. We got to a place about 30k in called Tengboche Monastery. And I suppose this is where I had made a bit of a, you look at it, like I say, net downhill, and you think it's all going to be downhill. And then you realize actually some of these uphills are pretty brutal. So that was our first real kind of sign of that, was coming up to Tengboche Monastery, and you were just absolutely shattered, and your heart's through the roof, and you're thinking, I'm struggling to even walk up these steps. And it's like, it took everything out of you to climb what was maybe just a couple of 100 meters in ascent, but it was really, really tough. And then over the back of that, you drop down 600 meters to a ravine, and then you climb back up the other side again, and you're like, oh, and you're taking sort of 3 steps and having to stop and have a breather, and you think, how how am I doing this in the middle of a marathon? But you just have to keep going, and that's why it was good to have company as well, just to sort of think, right, push on, push on.
And can you remember off the top of your head, apologies if you don't, what the actual elevation gain was, even though it's a downhill?
I think it was about 1,200 meters of gain over
Was
the course of that. Yeah, so there was a
Ah,
good amount of gain. That 600-meter climb was tough in its own right, but yeah, there were a
yeah,
lot of other bits that had ascent to it. Yeah.
yeah.
So
And that Tanboshi monastery that you mentioned, is
yes.
that like got a big ornate gate? Is that?
Yeah, it has
Yeah.
loads of beautiful places that you pass through. There's one ornate gate just as you sort of enter into the national park area, but I think there was another one at Tengboche Monastery, and it's got
Uh-huh.
the front gate of the monastery, pretty
Yeah.
spectacular. And we went
Yeah.
inside, and in fact, you might see what I'm wearing is a little, we got a little piece of string called a lama, and it's a wee
Okay.
blessing that we got from the monks in the monastery, and it's been on my neck ever since then. So yeah, just really nice, these little things that you feel are helping you on your way.
Yeah, definitely. That's really important. I get exactly what you mean, David. John.
You mentioned you picked up. I've got the lady's name, Adela. Am I saying
Yes,
that correctly?
Adela. Yes, that's right.
Adela,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
You picked up with Adela, and you're running together. Was there a bit of the course, and you're describing it brilliantly, painting a brilliant picture, so thank you very much for that. But was there a bit of the course that you really thought, this is what it's all about? This is why I'm here? Who was your happy place?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it would get easier as the race went on, and I have to say it didn't. So
Okay.
it got more challenging towards the end because of these climbs and because of the temperature and because of fatigue. But you just thought, I've got to get this done. I think that my best bit was probably, leaving base camp. So the first half of the race actually was probably my best bit, where there was some really nice running, some good descending. I felt actually I was good on the descending. I was happy doing that, strong enough legs. And yeah, so I really liked sort of losing that altitude coming down from base camp initially. And there were some, like I say, through the memorial stones, and then there were other bits as well. We had these incredible bridges that have strung up from one side of the valley to the other. And I don't know if you've seen any pictures of them, because they're covered in prayer flags fluttering in the wind. But you cross these huge suspension bridges that just run across from one side of the valley to the other. And you have to hope that you don't come across like a herd of yaks that are coming the opposite way, because you would often find, in some bits of the route that there were, 20 or 30 yaks coming, and you had to move over to the side. Now, of course, when you're walking in normal circumstances, you're patient and it's all fine. But when you're running a marathon, you're like, you don't want to be held up by the yaks. There were times where you'd be sort of squeezing past them, and you hope you don't meet them on the bridges. But yeah, there were definitely bits of it. I mean, there were times when you would turn around and you would just see the beauty of the mountains behind you, and you thought, wow, this is, it would always be different. So every place you were on the route, the view was different. The mountains looked different. The valley floor looked different. The greenery looked different. The tree line you came upon. So it was constantly changing. And you just felt it was like going on a journey. The whole thing was one big journey. And you're also reminding yourself that this took you days and days to trek up, and you're going to be back down in one day.
Yeah. Running in a kilt, is it something you've done frequently?
I would have to admit to that, yes, I'm afraid so. It's not a real kilt, to be honest. It's a cotton kilt called a sport kilt, and I've had it for so long that I got it by mail order, where I had to send a self-addressed envelope. But yeah, it's
I know that David runs in a kilt. I've been overtaken by David running in a kilt.
Special occasions, the kilt comes out. Yes,
the Great Tartan Skedaddle springs to mind.
oh gosh,
That one.
yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
Yes, I remember you shooting by me. I was like that. Who's that bugger? Smart. Who's that smart arse in a kilt?
That's going back a while. Yes.
Little
I was talking
did I
about that the
know.
other day because I was having to justify it actually, and we'll get onto this, but I'm about to do my 100th marathon this weekend. So that's another story. But I was talking about the Tartan Skedaddle coming up to that. So
yeah, brilliant, brilliant. So, like crossing the finish line, David, sounds like you and your pal crossed the finish line together, Adela.
We did, yeah, and that was lucky because we almost got lost coming back into Namche, where we missed a turning that took us down to where the finish was. So we had to then double back and get back. But yeah, it felt very much the right thing to do to cross the finish line together, and it was absolutely fine. It was it was really emotional because you thought, wow, I've done it, and here we are at the finish, and there's music playing, there's people milling around. You got presented with this beautiful white scarf that they give to people as a blessing. You got your medal. It was just, this great occasion. And of course, I was a bit dehydrated, so I had to sit down, get some fluids in me, get a bite to eat. And then you got to just stay and watch all the other finishers coming through. It was really, really so nice to see that. And everyone's come on this incredible journey. And they're all going to be finishing over the course of the next many, many hours, right through to dark as well. So, no, it was really nice to just actually get to the finish and watch it all from there.
Brilliant. And that finishing and that realization of essentially completing a dream, achieving a dream to go and run in Nepal, to be at Everest Base Camp, sitting there, hope you're bloody proud of what you've achieved as well, but was it what you'd hoped for? Was it what you'd expected to feel at the end? Yeah,
it really was. And it was perfect. To me, it was everything that I wanted it to be. I felt I was in good shape. My back hadn't given me any problems. I'd been able to enjoy. I mean, I can say that now looking back. I'm sure there were moments where I thought this is tough, but also in my head, you have no choice. You've just got to keep going. So it was a tough run. It was challenging on my body. I was tired, but you fight your way through and you get to the finish line. But it was everything that I wanted it to be. It was just in the most beautiful place. You felt that you'd done it justice. You felt you'd done the best that you could in the circumstances. And yeah, it was a phenomenal feeling to finish and to think that was it. The dream place, the dream event, the dream people, the people that we were with as well, the others in our trekking group that had all gone up together, to watch them all come through the finish as well, and to wait there until Cheryl came through and she had finished. It was dark by that point, but she had her head torch with her. We'd managed to get a message back from one of the Sherpas who was out on the course too, being able to speak to her and know that she was making her way back in. And when we saw, the lights of the finishers coming through deep into the late evening when it was dark, I mean, again, that was just so special to think that, here she was. No matter what pace you'd been, whether you were the Nepalese at the front end or whether you were bringing up the rear, but still achieving it in one day to get back down. Super proud of everybody.
You've just, listen to you speaking there, you're summing up the running community, David, the way you're speaking. So I love that, and thank you for doing that. One wee side thing here, Stephen. Imagine turning up to the first night of Couch to 5K for Fit Like Joggers Tonight, and the jog leader has just run the Everest Marathon. How inspirational is that, man?
Aye, but knowing David, and how many people you put through that, it's about passing on and you'll do it, and I've not got any doubt about this, about passing on in a humble way that this is a whole new world that you're entering here, this running, and it could change your life, like it probably has your own, David.
Yeah,
and that kind of, it's all relative, eh? When you first start and you look at somebody and you're like, God, never ever be able to do that. That's and then you and we said it before we came on air, actually, you've seen so many people who started on Couch to 5K who are now regular ultra marathoners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, and I tell people that, when you're a runner, you're on a running journey. There's no finished article. There's no person that's perfect. We're all on that running journey. I've been spending this weekend watching the race across Scotland, and the dot watching on that, and you think that's phenomenal. People that are involved in that, and that's a step beyond again, what we're talking about here. But it's just all part of the running journey, and we're all somewhere on that. And I didn't tell anyone tonight about the Everest Marathon, really, so I only put my T-shirt on just for you guys.
I don't know. I wouldn't have had it off by.
It's going on the wall. It's going on the wall. I can't wait.
It's only 2 months ago. You get a good 6 months before you get it framed.
Exactly.
Sorry, John, on you go.
Now, I was just wanting to ask about you talking about descending and coming back on the path that you went up. When you're traversing through that 26 miles, 26.2, sorry, is there a sensation of losing altitude, or is that not apparent on the day?
There definitely is, because the scenery changes. So you've gone from glacial rock to grassland, to then you get to the tree line, and you get to more of the rivers flowing. So it does feel like you're going on a journey from a scenic perspective. I didn't feel the change in altitude from a breathing perspective all that much, because there were some really tough bits at the end where you've got, like I say, this 600-meter climb towards the finish. So yeah, from that point of view, it didn't feel like that it got easier or better, but it did feel like a journey, and there was a change in terms of what you're seeing and the outlook.
So with regards to getting back to normal after that, being at that altitude, what was the sort of time there?
Well, yeah, I guess after the marathon, we then had another 2 days to trek back down to Lukla before we could fly out of Lukla. So even if your legs are a bit brutalized, you have no option but just to get back on them and get trekking again. So we did that, and then we flew out of Lukla. In fact, we were lucky to fly out, because the flights had been grounded the day before, and we thought they were going to be grounded again the day we were there. But thankfully, we did get on the first flight out when they opened the airport again. And then we had a couple of nights in Kathmandu, so that's back down at sort of more normal terrain. So you feel, I mean, everybody's buzzing. So there's a balance between how you might be feeling strong because of being up at altitude, but you're all, wired, excited, and what have you. And I thought I would come back and feel that your running is going really, really well. But of course, people pick up, there's really dry air there, so people pick up coughs and sort of chesty coughs and things. So I think everybody comes back with some element of a cough. So it's hard to then think, oh, I'm so well trained from running at altitude, I'm going to be invincible. So I don't think we quite got the benefit of it, because I mean, everyone came back with a wee bit of that cough that that impacted on your running. But yeah, I would like to say I came back and smashed out my marathon PBs, but no, it hasn't happened.
It's tell me, when you got back to Kathmandu, were you able to sample some Nepalese scran?
Oh yeah, there was good scran. There was a great finishing party as well in the hotel that we were at that
Uh-huh.
all of the others would come to, and there was dancing and drinks and everything. So that was good. And yeah, we got out to because we had a couple of days there into the local cafes and things, and just we're able to get some of the food. And of course, coming back as well, you now are looking out. So I had my 50th birthday the following week, and we went to a Nepalese restaurant in Aberdeen for that. So shout out to 8848, of course. And that was really good. So no, liking the Nepalese food.
Yeah.
Right. We can shout out to 8848 as well. And we can visit Aberdeen, Stephen, and we can go in and talk about it.
Eight,
Sample.
eight.
Oh, they're great guys.
Eight.
Great. Yeah.
Aye.
Recovery. A different type of recovery, maybe. How have you been since? I mean, well, it was in May, but now August. How was your recovery time?
Yeah, it was all right actually in terms of recovery from the event. I think it helped having 2 days of still trekking afterwards. That got the legs moving again. And actually, we got back on the Tuesday, and on the Saturday, I was organising the next Brewdog run. So I was straight into that. So that was, I had to get my legs moving for that. And then a week later, for my actual birthday weekend, I had organised a 50K run with the running club. So I didn't give myself much of a recovery. So yeah, I'm afraid it was just straight back into it. And since then, I've done a few other runs. Did the Glentanner 55K a couple of weeks ago. That was a new race up in the northeast of Scotland.
Yeah,
so that was okay. Nothing spectacular speed wise. So, but just being able to enjoy the running still. Yeah.
Brilliant. Sorry there, John. Brilliant. We just did a brilliant and perfect coordination there, John. David, so happy 50th, by the way. It sounds like you've really celebrated it in style, and I'm absolutely smitten by your descriptions in Nepal and such like. I was sitting here like looking at photos whilst you've been speaking, so that my mind's eye was painting the right picture just off the
Oh wow.
the website, the Everest Marathon website, which is a fountain of information on there about it all as well. So we'd say to listeners, if they're intrigued in any way, to pop on over, and their appetite will be more than whetted on that. But what do you do next? What's next on the agenda? What's like you alluded to something earlier.
So two elements to that. I mean, you often finish an event and you think, what is next? How do I better that? How do I have something else to aim towards? And I feel the opposite with this one. I came back with it being everything that I wanted it to be, and it was phenomenal. And I don't need to have a next. I don't need to have something that can better that, or something that's tougher than that, or something that is the next level. This was everything it could have been. I was so happy with the opportunity to go, and with having such an amazing time that I've come back just riding that wave of enthusiasm and contentment, rather than feeling any post-race blues that you would normally go through. So I've definitely just been enjoying the memories of it as much as anything. So yeah, on that basis, there wouldn't necessarily have to be a next. But of course, there always is. And it's not quite in the same league.
I love
but,
David's he's got this laugh that's just like going, it's like a villain's laugh in a movie going, Sorry,
Oh,
David.
Yeah, that one there. Yeah.
No, don't get me
Exactly
started.
that one.
Yeah. So I'm going up this weekend. Yeah, I am
go
running
for
this
it.
weekend. We're going to the Speyside Way Ultra, which is Kyle Gregg's race up on Speyside. It was one of the Scotland's oldest races, actually, started in the early 90s by Don Ritchie. So there's a 50K and a 100K. And I did think, if this is going to be my 100th marathon or ultra marathon, I should do the 100K. But I'm not gonna. I'm gonna do the 50K, which starts at Tamdhu, finishes up in Bucky, and yeah, that'll be fine. But yeah, 100 marathons. I hadn't realised till I started totting them up. I knew I was getting closer to that, but yeah.
And then
What an achievement! That's
I
brilliant.
know you get then that you join that club, don't you? Do you
Yeah, well,
You
actually
get
got in
like a
touch with the
t-shirt.
100 Marathon Club, and they've gone through, and now they're questioning. Oh, we don't have the results for the skedaddle race. What was this? Or we don't think that's a
I'll
real
get him the
event.
results for the skedaddle race.
I know. Well,
Fucking
let's find them all.
David
Let's find
Scott
them
fucking beat me the best.
all.
I'm only joking. Send them in my direction.
I know. Yeah, I said I'll give you my Strava for them all.
Definitely.
So,
So no, that's phenomenal. 100 marathons, and that's obviously marathons and ultra marathons combined, because you're obviously doing a
yeah. So I
50k.
think
So
70 of them will be ultras and 30
of
marathons. Yeah, so far more
course.
ultras than marathons. Yeah, I have to get myself a new medal rack soon.
Oh, aye, definitely, definitely. Where have you got your medal from? Everest
I have
just
them in
now.
my hallway. Yeah. Oh well,
Mhm.
just now I would say round my neck. That no, I got it out for the occasion. Here you go.
Ah,
Here is
there
my
it
There
is.
we
Everest
go.
medal. If you can see that, yeah,
Beautiful.
It's quite,
Beautiful.
no,
it's quite a circumference, isn't it?
it's a
The
decent size.
medal,
Yeah. It's a decent size, and then
the medal,
a runner
John.
on the back. Yeah.
Love it.
Actually, we were really well kind of treated there when we first arrived in Kathmandu. You get given all of this stuff, and we were like, God, it keeps on coming. So we got this bag, and you got a race T-shirt. So we got a race T-shirt that they wanted us all to run in. You got a separate polo shirt. You got a tracksuit, so a full-on hoodie and trousers. You got a gilet, beautiful like gilet for trekking and running in. What else we get? We got a duffel bag, and then they had other stuff as well. They had baseball caps, they had arm sleeves, and it was all branded Everest Marathon. So you come back with all this stuff. So maybe that's why all 200 people finished it, because they've got so much gear that they want to wear that if you've not finished the race, then you don't get to do it.
Yeah, that sounds like
So no,
some
it was really, really good. So, in
amazing
terms when you're looking
swag.
at these things and from a cost perspective, you do get a lot out of it. And
Uh-huh.
even paying for the whole trek, by the time you're away for 20 days, that's a lot of accommodation, a lot of food,
Yeah.
your internal flights and everything else, your five guides, your porters who are carrying your stuff. So although you think to yourself, it is quite a lot for a trek and for a marathon, you do get a lot back out of it, and
Yeah.
it's worth it in terms of the adventure that you're going to have.
You know what? You can get all the material stuff that you want, but hearing you speak about it, David, with such passion, you've got memories that will last you the rest of your life, and it's been an experience of a lifetime. I think that's what I'm hearing. And if I had that much kit, they take to rip it off me. I'd be wearing it every single day. Arm sleeve jackets, jillies, hats, the whole lot. I'd probably find a way to wear a duffel bag. So, no, absolutely fantastic. Anybody that's feeling a wee bit inspired by this story, and it might not be Everest, they might not be going to Everest, they might be going to some other adventure, it might be an adventure they're going to have in Scotland. But if somebody's got a dream to do something, David, and you had a dream, someone scratched or planted a wee scratch, an itch that you've got to scratch, and you all the years ago when you seen about the Everest Marathon, somebody's got a dream. What would you say to them? They're thinking, maybe I could do that. What
Yeah,
would you say?
I mean, in terms of whether it's Everest or whatever your Everest is, it's doable. There's always a way. There's always a way to do it, and there's always a way to get what you want out of it. So, I mean, this was to me just an opportunity that came, and I was so happy with how it all worked out. But it's just a case of grabbing that opportunity and thinking, if this sounds right, then do it. Just do it.
Mm.
And I would say as well, particularly about Everest, it might sound really tough in the way I've been describing it and the altitude, but it can be accessible for anyone. There was one person there who'd never run a marathon before, and she'd turned up to come and do it because she wanted to do it. And you get a long time. You've got plenty time to do it. If you can get used to the altitude, which you don't know until you get there, you've got every bit as much chance of earning that medal as someone at the front end of the race. So yeah, whatever it might be, if you get the opportunity, don't let it pass you by.
I love that. Whatever your Everest is, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
Ooh. John, you've got your appetite whetted, haven't you? I can tell.
Oh, God, aye. Way
Yeah.
back at the start of this conversation, aye,
When's your
definitely.
when's your 50th again?
I'd take a date for my 70th, man, but that's all right. That's all right.
Yes, man. He's made a commitment there. And David, thank you for planting that seed with him, because I'll just watch it grow.
There we go. Good.
And
Well, if we ever
I'll
see you, yeah,
nurture it. I'll nurture
good.
it along. Brilliant. We're getting to the business end of things. Now, you've been to this business end of the Young Hearts Run Free podcast before, David, and we like to ask for a dialect dictionary word at this stage of the episode. So we're hoping that there's one from some
Well,
other country in the world, maybe.
I would say the word that we use most over there is namaste, which is the greeting that you say to everybody as you pass. And of course, you're passing hundreds of people on the trail, and you say namaste to every single person that you passed. And it's a lovely, lovely word, and it means I bow to you. And it's just that kind of courteous greeting of the Nepalese people. But that's not going to be my word. That was just the intro. So I was
Okay.
thinking about this, and I thought my word, and it was to one that we used on the trek going up, and it was pastari, 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 our guide would say, and that was slowly, slowly. And it was just really telling you, take it slowly, the whole of the trek up, if you want to acclimatize, if you want to enjoy this. And it was not just really about acclimatizing, it was about just living in the moment, looking around you. So he would say pastari, pastari, and the guides would always be saying pastari, pastari, and we'd repeat it back to them. And it was just nice to think, actually, live life slowly, live life slowly, take it slowly, and then that's where you're going to get the most of it. So pastari.
Love it.
Pastari. I'm going to use that. Never heard it before. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No, I think it's getting dark where John is.
It is, yeah. I've had to switch my screen to I've had to switch my screen to Edmund Hillary's Wikipedia, so it's light on my face.
I thought I could see him reflecting on your cheeks. Yes.
Yeah, if I go there, yeah.
50p in the meter.
Right to sit there. No, you know what though? It's that time of year, man. It's that time of year when the lights change. And I said that to David at the start of the night. I had a light on, but it was like I was lit up with a big halo. And nobody needs to see me like that, you know?
I thought it was for real.
Well, maybe that's how you see me, Stephen. Thank you. David, music question. A song of your choice, and it could be from your travels to Everest Base Camp. It could be from anywhere throughout your, someone that's inspired you that we can then share with the Young Hearts Run Free listeners to also be inspired. What song does David Scott want to add in?
I'm a fan of the old classics, so for this, I'm going to pick John Denver, Rocky Mountain High. He's a good, it's a cracking song. It's the wrong mountain range from where I've been, but nobody's written too many songs about Everest. So we're going to move to Colorado for John Denver with the Rocky Mountain High.
Ain't nobody going to argue with that tune. That is an absolute belter. One of John Denver's many belting tunes. Yeah.
That's officially added to volume 10 of it.
Good.
I would like to also, before we wrap up, I'd like to also interject. There was a song that was suggested to me when I was doing the Manchester Marathon. It's a song by a band called Public Service Broadcasting, and the name of the tune is Everest. And it's the story of mountaineers climbing Everest. So I think it feels very appropriate to add that one in too, because it's timely for this episode.
Also a belter or earworm. Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, if I'd thought about it, we could have had that.
Well, we've got both now. It's all right. It's all right.
Tremendous.
David, this chat has been absolutely enthralling. Honestly, I've been on the edge of my seat a couple of times when you were talking about Everest, because there is a childlike wonder in me about Everest as well, and to speak to somebody who's been there and talking about it, and even your backdrop suggests Everesty type stuff. So thank you very much for having that as well. But the way you've described it and painted a picture of your journey has been brilliant, but also the way that you are with the running community, I thank you very much for that and everything that you do. Happy 50th birthday. I think it's very apt that you're doing a 50k run at the weekend as well. So I'm going to hand over to Stephen to wrap us up, but thank you so much for your time, David. I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you for having me.
I also just want to say congratulations to Cheryl as well for getting that done, because you spoke about other people and how important that is to you and that shared experience. That's what I was taking away for that, and that was Cheryl, and then a whole load of new people that you met as well that I'm sure you'll keep in touch with, and on Instagram or whatever else, sharing photos of your shared experience, because that's the stuff that's etched in your mind's eye, isn't it? So congratulations to the precarious. I also think a finish list of finishers and your names on that with your title in it is something that should come into all races. So, Mr. David Stewart Scott, well done on
The
your
full name, the full
your,
name.
your magnificent, right off your birth certificate, your magnificent time. And I say that, your magnificent time out in Nepal. And thanks for joining us to let us know all about it. And it was great to chat to you again, David. Thanks so much.
Good, a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Thank you.